Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Ganganasadrisham Tattvamasyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami.
Dear Seeker of Truth, welcome. This work that we are going to talk about is one of the most sacred dialogues because it happens between two enlightened beings. One is Ashtavakra, the other is King Janaka, which was Ashtavakra's disciple. So in it you will have a glimpse of the instruction of an enlightened being so that you can achieve liberation, and also the vision of how a liberated being stands, acts, what is his experience. So pay attention to these teachings, fill your heart with surrender, devotion, sacredness, because that is the way to enjoy it the most. May it blossom in your heart, may you also find liberation. Moving on, we are in the first chapter of Ashtavakra Samhita. We have gone through the first two verses, and the line of question and answer is aligned with the ancient Vedantic tradition. So the questioning is about liberation, about knowledge of the self, and about renunciation. And the answer comes aligned also with these lines of teachings, Vedantic principles. So Ashtavakra starts to explain how renunciation is possible, what should be done. So let us bear in mind that even to start speaking about the Vedantic teachings, some qualifications have to be there. They are implicit. So if you look at these teachings and say, oh, these teachings are for anybody, it is not the case. So these qualifications, as already explained previously, a little bit, and calmness of the mind, silence of the mind, purity, stillness, intense desire for liberation, this has to be there, or else there's no point going into these teachings. So continuing. So in the answer of Ashtavakra, he has mentioned that if you aspire for liberation, shun the objects of the senses. And this, bear in mind that this is not a spiritual practice that you apply for 1 hour or 2 hours or whatever you remember. This is a way of life. So spiritual practice, the sadhana, is a way of life. It is 24/7. So shun the objects of the senses. So what does this mean? The world as you perceive it, the dream and the dreamer, all have to be renounced. And what is left? Truth is left. So, renunciation is only possible through discrimination. And this is what Ashtavakra now starts to shed some light into the seeker's question. So, third verse. You are neither earth, nor water, nor fire, nor air, nor space. In order to attain liberation, know the self as the witness of all of these and as consciousness itself. So, what is he saying here? Everything, apparently, the world as you know it, the whole universe, all this experience, it is made up of these elements. The body is made of elements. The scenario where the body is made of elements. Everything is made of elements. That body is made of elements. So, if you are not the elements, you are not that body. And this eliminates everything. Everything. So, in order to attain liberation, you are neither these elements, none of these elements. And in order to attain liberation, you have to know the self as the witness, that which observes all those elements. Meaning, you have to detach from the elements, breaking this wrong identification with the elements, and identify yourself with the real identity, with the witness that observes these elements and through these elements. And you are consciousness itself. If you detach yourself from the body and rest in consciousness, you will at once be happy, peaceful, and free from bondage. Because if you detach from the body, you can only rest in consciousness, because either there's one, which is the illusion, the identification with the body, or there's the natural state, which is liberation. And here he says, if you detach yourself from the body and rest in consciousness, you will at once be happy, peaceful, and free from bondage. That is the natural state, that is the self, the real self. So once illusion is broken, reality shines forth. So this first verse, or second, but the first answer of Ashtavakra says, shun the objects of the senses as poison, because this gives a purpose for the character, the body, a purpose of existence, because the objects of the senses are for the body. That means you'll be polarized beyond the body and working for the body. So how can you detach from the body? So first you keep a distance from the objects of the senses, then you can work on detaching from the body itself, acknowledging that you are not none of these elements, so you are not the body. And once you detach from the body, once you detach from illusion, reality shines. You do not belong to any Brahmana or any other caste or any other ashram, which is stage of life. You are not perceived by the senses, unattached, formless, and witness of all are you. Be happy. So, the ashrama is the stages of life in which Hindu society divides itself more or less. So there is the brahmacharya, the grihastya, vanaprashta, and sannyasa. So these are duties according to the stage of life. And here Ashtavakra is clearly saying that you don't belong to any of these ashramas, any of these stages of life, because you are not perceived by the senses. So whatever is perceived by the senses, it is not you. You are none of these elements, remember. And these elements are perceived by the senses. And then he speaks about unattached, formless, and witness of all are you, which is, he is talking about the self. So be happy, because that is the nature of the self. Virtue and vice, pleasure and pain are of the mind, not you. O all-pervading one, you are neither doer nor enjoyer. Verily, you are ever free. So again, these pair of opposites belong to the mind. The senses belong to the mind. So he started through the body, telling that you are not the body. Now he's coming to the mind, showing that you are not the mind, you are different from the mind. So these pair of opposites, they are of the mind, not of you. You are just the observer of all of that. And he says, O all-pervading one. This is the self. You are neither doer nor enjoyer. Verily, you are ever free. You are freedom itself. Not the doer, not the one that acts, not the one that reaps the fruits of actions. Because the body acts and reaps the fruits. You are neither one nor the other. You are verily the self, ever free. So he is giving an instruction about the real nature of the seeker, in opposing to the seeker's illusion of who he is. You are the one seer of all, and are really ever free. Verily, this alone is your bondage, that you see yourself not as the seer, but as something other. So Ashtavakra says here that verily, this alone is your bondage. But he will use this many times in different circumstances, because it may be seen as a matter of perspective, and in a way it is. But it is more than that, because it's not about just knowing that you are the self, knowing that you are totality, that you are not the body. You will have to act accordingly. Because if you still indulge, if you still, in by any way, feed this notion that I'm the body, by being concerned about the body, by investing, protecting the body, and all of these things, it will not make a difference. This, oh, I'm not the body. It will not make a difference. But if you know this and you act accordingly, then it will make a difference. So you are the one seer of all, the self. You are verily ever free. Verily, this alone is your bondage, that you see yourself not as the seer, but as something other, doer, enjoyer, and etc. And the actions that are happening, you are giving it the importance and standing by them as in complete denial that you are the self. So this alone is your bondage, meaning that this way of maintaining duality is your bondage, the belief of duality. Burn down the forest of ignorance with the fire of pure conviction, I am the one, and pure consciousness, and be free from grief and be happy. So burn down the forest of ignorance. What is the forest? The forest is the universe, the multitude of different things, all the agglomerate of everything. with the fire of the conviction, I am the one, meaning your actions have to assert this. There's the instinct for survival, for example, and it pushes you to protect this body. But if you are not the body, you will not answer to that instinct. That is very high, very intense spiritual practice, but it is what is being asserted here. It's not something, not sentence to repeat. And burning down the forest of ignorance is a good example, because standing by this conviction is very intense and brings a lot of fire. Be free from grief, meaning from illusion, and be happy, the natural state. You are that consciousness, bliss, supreme bliss, in and upon which this universe appears superimposed. Like a snake on a rope. Live happily. You are the self, that ultimate reality, and everything which you're giving importance now, the body, the universe, is superimposed like a snake on a rope, meaning there's just the rope, which is just the self. There's no snake, it's just imagination, it's just illusion. So stand by that conviction and burn the forest of ignorance through that conviction. But again, let us remind us that without calmness of the mind, without purity of the mind, without renunciation, without discrimination, without silence, tranquility, none of this is possible. And I will remind you of this all along, because it's very easy to forget that. You just go along with the verses, and it's like the first verses have disappeared, and just the last ones. It is always the same teaching which gets new complexities. So it's very important to keep this in mind. And this example of the snake and the rope, this is a very classic example in Vedantic teachings, like a mirage in the desert, a snake in a rope, and the likes, because it really represents the nature of what you call reality, of the term superimposition. So we cannot say that there's a beginning to that snake. There's an ending to that snake. There's an existence of that snake. But still, there you are, trembling in fear because of that vision and reacting. So your reaction and your fear makes that snake real for you. So this analogy is a perfect analogy. There is nothing there. It's just superimposed. Again, the vision and the conviction. He who considers himself free is free indeed. And he who considers himself bound remains bound. As one thinks, so one becomes. It is a popular saying in this world, and it is quite true. So, he who considers himself free is not just a sentence that he repeats to itself. It's not. It is the reflection, that belief has to be the reflection of an attitude towards this body and this universe. So if I consider myself free, actions will will show that. Because if I say, oh, but I'm free, I consider myself free, therefore I'm free. But then comes the fear and I react. There's attachment and I hold on to, and I respond to these different impulses. So what is the meaning? What is the strength, the truth in that sentence? I believe I'm free. There's no strength. There's just a sentence. Just the same illusion. So this considers oneself free means I'm not swayed by impulses, fears. I'm not impressed by illusion. I am established in my own self. And the one who considers himself bound. So the one who reacts to attachments, fears, dependencies, who hasn't established itself in the self. So his actions are the real revelation of his convictions, not what he thinks is his convictions, but the actions. The self is witness, all-pervading, perfect, one, free, consciousness, actionless, unattached, desireless, and quiet. Through illusion, it appears as if it is of this world, of the world. Which means to the ever-repeating cycle of birth and death. So here again, he is talking about the real identity, which is the self. The witness, so not that which engages, but that which observes, the presence, identity. All-pervading, perfect, one, because there's just the self. Free consciousness, actionless, unattached, desireless, and quiet. So even these words are just to give vision so that that conviction can grow and gain power. And it's always about the attitude behind the belief, not just the belief itself. Okay.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.